Welcome in. That time of year, Hunt Palmer, Matt Musso, 4 days to opening day, LSU baseball, cranking things up 2025 style. Musso, I know what time of year it is because we're 4 days from opening day, and I got a knock on my door this morning. It was one of our assistants. She's got Omaha flights that she's looking to book for me. So
there you go. Let's go.
That's where we are on the calendar. We're getting ready to go to Omaha, and we'll see if LSU can do that this year. Certainly a disappointing end to last season. They got off to an atrocious start in SEC play, just 3-12, turned it around 10-5 down the stretch, made it, and they were a couple of innings away in Chapel Hill of getting back to a home super regional and potentially a chance at Omaha. We saw Florida squeak in and get to Omaha last year. That didn't happen for LSU. A disappointing season when you put it kind of in summation, but there were some things that you saw that give you some optimism moving into this year, I think.
No, for sure. And I think you see it at all levels too, right? I mean, you saw it on the pitching staff. I mean, I know we're going to talk plenty about Cade Anderson, but him coming on strong at the end of the year last season definitely leads into this season going, okay, wait a minute. He's ready to take a next step. So you see it there. You definitely saw it offensively with Steven Milam, with Jake Brown, with Ashton Larson, all of those guys. They're back. I mean, Jared Jones had a great year. And even defensively, I mean, LSU was really playing some good ball on the field at the end of last season. You've got some shuffling there, but at every level, you saw them take the steps necessary, and ultimately that's what led them on that run, and now you do head into 2025. And not that the expectation's ever gone around here, Hunt, but it's definitely back in full force for year 4 under Jay Johnson.
No doubt. It's the same every year about this time, and this year certainly is no different. You lose Tommy White, who is probably going to the College Baseball Hall of Fame, was a thumper in the middle of your lineup. You lose the 1-2 punch at the top of your rotation with Gage Jump and Luke Holman, who were sensational at the end of last year. I think LSU won 6 of Jump's last 7 starts and 5 of the last 6 that you saw from Holman. Griffin Herring was all everything out of the bullpen and was sensational in his last outing as a Tiger to get LSU to the regional final. Those are the biggest shoes to fill. Any of those seem more concerning than another?
I mean, you're always going to look at the front of your rotation, right? I mean, I think that's where you start, but I think LSU has some great options there. I mean, obviously, look, we just mentioned Cade Anderson, and he's been phenomenal up to this point, whether it be in the fall or I don't know if you want to call it spring or whatever.
I usually go preseason.
Yeah, preseason. I mean, it is 80 degrees outside. But
it felt like June on Saturday.
It did, but preseason is kind of what I like to lean to, too. And he's been great there, too. So, I mean, I think he's probably your first choice there potentially, but everyone's going to want to know about Chase Shores. You got a guy like Zach Cohen who is an ace in a mid-major staff. He's probably not even going to figure into your rotation, at least right now. I mean, you've got plenty of options there. I think maybe your bullpen you're looking at, because obviously you do lose Griffin Herring, and that's really the one spot where I'll hear an argument that this team is a young team, because you will have probably 4 freshmen that contribute in some form or fashion in the bullpen in different roles. Obviously, Connor Ware coming in from junior college. Can it translate, things of that nature? So I would go front end of your rotation, but mainly bullpen.
Let's start with the rotation. We usually start offensively. Let's just go to the pitching here. I think Cade Anderson is your ace.
Yeah.
And it gives me a little bit of pause that you're leaning on a guy that's never done this before. That's a huge pillar to any great college baseball team, is to have a guy at the front of the rotation that you feel can get you off to a great start on an SEC weekend, can get you off to a great start in a regional or a super, get you off to a great start in Omaha. I mean, I'm not asking everybody to be Skeens, but it's nice to have that if it's available. But Cade Anderson, I think, is going to get the first shot here. And there were times last year where he was brilliant. If you look at the 2 outings that he had against Southeastern and against Rice as a midweek starter, he pitched 10 innings in those 2 starts and struck out 20. That's pretty salty. He also had 5 strikeouts in 6 strikeouts in a regional outing that was 2 1/3. So he only got 7 outs, and 6 of them were strikeouts. It was sensational from that perspective. He throws hard, 94, 95. The breaking ball is really good. All the talent's there, and he's now got that injury far enough in the rearview mirror where you don't have to think about it at all. And I think the talent's there, but it's a question mark at the top of the rotation. How do you feel about it?
No, it is a question mark, but it's one that I'm becoming more and more comfortable with. I think you kind of touched on it there at the end of the season, because everybody's going to talk about Cade Anderson in 2024, and they're going to mention he was great in the pre-conference, and then he struggled mightily in SEC play. And that's not wrong. That's not incorrect. There were some other circumstances that went along with that. I mean, he didn't get the best fortune sometimes. That happens in baseball. But down the stretch, starting in the SEC tournament, when he came in that marathon game against South Carolina through shutout ball, against Tennessee in the championship game, a team that won the national championship, in a tight ball game, it was a 1-run game, throw shutout ball there, You mentioned the outings against Wofford and North Carolina in the regional. That's in front of big crowds, big moments for a freshman. He grew up, and that looks like it's translated here in the fall, where he was awesome. And I think he's given up all of 1 run so far in the preseason and struck out 18 and 14 of his innings that he's thrown. I'm becoming more and more confident there. You are correct, though. When there's going to be 10,000 people in the box, opening day, lights are as bright as they've ever been, including in the regional last year. What does it look like? But the other thing I love, too, is when Nate Yeske met with the media in his preseason slot and availability, and he was asked about the biggest jump that Anderson has made. It was nothing about his stuff. It was all leadership, taking ownership of the staff, helping the young guys, understanding his role more. And when I heard that, I'm like, that sounds like an ace.
Do you have a second guy in mind at this point?
Not really.
Okay,
I mean, I'm telling you, I'm going to be kind of fall over stunned if it's not Cade Anderson at this point on Friday with everything that he's done leading up to this point.
So do you have a second option in the rotation? Who do you think is the next guy?
I think Anthony Ianson right now is the next guy. And I will tell you this. You tell me if you disagree. Have you seen him? I have not. Okay, I have not seen him yet either. I really want to know, is it going to translate? Because he's a scout's dream. And the guy's 6'2", like 200 pounds, throws mid-90s, 4 pitches, Team USA. Like, he's a scout's dream. But we've seen that guy show up and it not necessarily hit. I'm very excited to see him. But I just think looking at things and hearing things and talking, and it looks like he's done pretty well throughout the fall and the preseason. And it would stand to reason a guy with his experience level into his junior year, the innings that he has under his belt, that he would get that number 2 spot to start.
He has proven that he can be a frontline starter at the lower level and eat a lot of innings. He pitched over 80 innings last year, struck out over 80 guys. I think that there's reason for optimism with him. I think he's their number 2 starter right now. It wouldn't shock me if Chase Shores was the Saturday guy based on the cadence we saw over the final weekend. We saw Cade Anderson pitch on Friday. We saw Chase Shores pitch on Saturday. So we'll see if that translates to the weekend. But I think Ianson's probably their second guy right now. Breaking ball is really good. That is something that the spin metrics are on it are really good. He got a lot of swings and misses with it last year. The fastball, I believe, is somewhere 93, 95, but the breaking ball is going to be the swing and miss pitch for him. I wrote a piece for LouisianaSports.net over the weekend, and I said I think he will lead LSU in strikeouts. That was a bold prediction there. I think Anderson's probably the betting favorite if you were going to put that number out there, but I think Ianson's got a chance to be a real innings eater for LSU. I'm excited about him.
I am too. I mean, it just never worked out that I got out there to see him. But I'm fired up because he looks like a prototypical SEC pitcher. We'll see if he is.
So as far as the third option, I've been sticking with this, and we'll see in the course of 5 days if I'm right or wrong here. But the thought that I had when talking about the Sunday starter, this is where I pigeonhole Chase Shores in. Mm-hmm. This is the reasoning for it. Last year, if you'll recall, LSU got off to a terrible start in Game 3s. It wasn't always Sunday because they played the Thursday series. But Game 3s, LSU was terrible. Got swept at Arkansas, got swept at Knoxville. They lost rubber games to Florida and Vanderbilt and Mississippi State. And in those games, you saw LSU face Jurangelo Sainja, who was the 15th pick in the draft, throwing 97 miles an hour with both arms. You saw Jack Caglione, who was a hitter, but he was the 6th pick in the draft. You saw Carter Holton. Now, that was a different deal because Vanderbilt had an injury, and then they had an early sweep, and so the days got messed up. But you saw Carter Holton, who went in the 2nd round. You also saw Xander Sechrist from Tennessee, who ended up pitching the decisive game in the National Championship Series for the Vols. He was very good. You saw in Fayetteville, Brady Tigert, who was an elite closer as a young pitcher, got hurt a little bit, but he's an elite talent. You saw ridiculous talent in Game 3s, and LSU was trying to counter that with Ackenhausen or whoever the case may have been. There's something to be said for that talent at the back end of a rotation, and I think if you've got an SEC team that's been out there on the field for 2 days, for 4 hours at a time, maybe some tired legs, you got a flight coming, and then here comes 98 from Chase Shores on a Game 3, like that seems to me would give LSU a stuff advantage. That's where I'm thinking about Chase Shores. What are your Chase Shores thoughts?
I'm in the same boat as you. I have him in the 3 spot right now on Sunday. I love the thinking, and you're right. I mean, that was maddening. LSU had a lot of problems in Game 3. It started there, though, with the arms that you were facing. For me, I have likened Chase Shores' situation really since back in the fall, even during the summer a little bit when they were constructing the roster, to Gage Jump a year ago. Gage Jump came here, was all world, could get up to 97 from the left side if he was really raring back, but he had thrown 16 in the third innings, and that was it. Chase Shores has thrown 18 in the third innings. It's going to take some time. So I think Sunday's just a great spot for him to be in right there, where you can ramp him up. He's experiencing things that he's never experienced here, just even in scrimmages, situationally. I mean, Chase Shores in his freshman season was never asked to go out there and, okay, didn't go great in the first inning, but hey, can you give us a little bit of length here down, and keep us in the ball game? That's something he's going to be asked to do now. That's going to change things. He might go out there in the pre-conference and dominate because he throws 100, and Purdue-Fort Wayne doesn't see that all the time, right? So it might look exceptional. It did for Gage Jump a year ago as well. He got into conference, hit some speed bumps. I think the same thing could happen for Chase Shores. I like Sunday as a spot to kind of work that out. Obviously, you hope it's worked out a little bit more if you're going to have him Sunday in a conference week because you could be playing a rubber game. But when it does happen, having him on Sunday, that's elite. You could bookend your rotation with two aces, basically, with Anderson and Shores. So I'm all for that. I've always kind of just preached patience with Chase Shores here early on because while we're all very aware of him, it's been 18 in the third inning so far in his college career.
Yeah, the velocity was really good in his final tune-up. He was up to 100, so he's got that. He's still working on the slider and the command issues. And I think that's a reasonable take that it may take him a little bit of time, but if at some point it clicks, that's certainly what you're looking for. As far as the bullpen goes, I have to start the conversation with Connor Ware because I think he's a star. He's left-handed, and he is going to kind of go into that Griffin Herring role. I think that's an easy comparison to make, but he's been sensational. He was a starter in junior college. He throws low 90s generally, but he's got two really good breaking balls, and I think he's going to be a great stopper for LSU. And then I'm going to pair him in the discussion with Gavin Guidry. I think based on matchup and availability, if somebody's gone 3 innings a day before, obviously they're not going to be able to go. I think those are the two guys at the back end that LSU will trust to get huge outs early on. I know Guidry has been stretched out. Maybe he gets an opportunity to start. That wouldn't stun me, but it's a great fallback plan to have him available late in games. He's throwing a little bit harder than he has, and he's always got that hammer of a breaking ball. So those are the two guys I think that the staff trust to start things in the bullpen. Is that where you are?
No, yeah, for sure. I mean, I'm with you. I'm glad you mentioned the Griffin Herring role with Connor Ware, too, because for me, that's just an easy answer. And it's not just like the comparables, but this is a guy you mentioned who starts in junior college. He also had a couple saves in junior college. Like, he's shown the ability to pitch at every point of the ball game, which Griffin Herring could do. The lefty and the stuff comparison just, kind of flows in general. But Jay Johnson, I mean, he's always said it since he got here in 2022 that one of his best pitchers is going to pitch in the bullpen. And that was brought back up a bunch last year with Griffin Herring because of the Sunday problems. It's like, well, why don't you just start Griffin Herring on Sunday? Well, he's more valuable to you winning the first game or potentially the second game to close it out. Connor Ware seems like he's that guy. Would it shock me if he gets a start at some point this season? No, not at all, because he has that ability. But, yeah, no, he's the Herring guy for me, and that could be, like you said, at the end of the game. It could be in the middle of the game. Just when the game is in the balance, Connor Ware is going to get a shot to go out there and pitch. Gavin Guidry absolutely should be your first option at the very back end of your bullpen because he's the only one on this team that has proven to be able to close out games in this league at the end. So, yeah, and that's great. I haven't seen him pitch yet this preseason either, so I'm glad to hear the velo's ticked up a little bit. And, I mean, yeah, the slider's just, I mean, if you want to call it that, it's deadly.
So a lot of 93s, 94s for Guidry, which is a little bit of an uptick there in his third year. So that's going to be good. Is there another arm that you'd like to highlight? I have one, but I don't. We've talked about the guys at the top of the rotation, and then your top two bullpen arms at this point. Is there another arm?
I have a few, and they're both, or all three of them are freshmen.
Yep.
And it starts with Case and Evans for me. And I'll tell you,
that's my name.
Yeah, okay. I'll tell you what I love about it, Hunt, is just the athleticism. The guy was the 19th ranked shortstop in high school baseball a year ago, and LSU's got him pitching, and he's awesome. He's going to get a chance, I think, in leverage spots early because he throws, like 98, 99?
High 90s.
Yeah, I mean, that just profiles to the back end of your bullpen. Now, he'd have to go through the growing pains there and wait and see. And, like, okay, hey, man, you're going to go out there, face, Arkansas here. You ready to close out the game? I don't know yet, but he's got the stuff to do it. Like, high 90s profiles from the right side as your closer. I mean, obviously, we have to talk about William Schmidt. I mean, William Schmidt's the second highest rated player to ever make it to campus for LSU. I'm sorry, I take that back. He's the highest rated player to ever make it to campus. I saw him a few different times, and it's been a bit of a mixed bag, but the inning that impressed me the most was the second time I saw him. He went out there. He threw the best inning of the day for any LSU pitcher. Was up to 97, mowed through Braswell and Stanfield and guys like that. Couple strikeouts, and I was just like, that intrigues me potentially at the back end of your bullpen. A guy coming in throwing 97 with the pitch mix that he has. And then the other one's Cooper Williams, lefty from Texas, Alvin High School. He seems to me, with what I've seen, as a guy that they're really trying to test and figure out where he fits best. Kind of like they did with Fidel Ulloa last year in the scrimmages, where I've seen him come in mid-inning and face a lefty in a matchup and then also extend. So he just intrigues me. I mean, it's low 90 stuff, a couple different breaking balls. Those three really intrigue me, and the fact that they're freshmen just, I think, adds to the intrigue.
I could see a Zach Hess type season from Evans or Schmidt, where if you remember with Hess in his freshman year, he started a couple of midweek games. They were kind of seeing where, and then they found out, well, if we put him at the end, he can really air it out, and he can get it up there in the high 90s and throw that nasty breaking ball, and he became a dominant closer at the end of 2017. So that's something that I could see. I think Evans is the guy that I think the staff got to campus and they started scrimmaging, and they're like, oh, I don't know if I knew that that's what we had here. And that's the sense I got from a couple of conversations I had with people inside the program, is like, everyone knew that Schmidt was going to show up and throw 96 mile an hour with the big break. Like, that was not a surprise. But Evans showed up, because we didn't talk a lot about Kason Evans pre-draft. Like, that was not a name in the class that we thought was a significant risk. And I don't know how significant the risk may have been. But he got to campus and they're like, oh, like, so you're going to see both of those guys pitch early and often. Schmidt pitched in the scrimmage back on Sunday, gave it back-to-back home runs to Derek Curiel, who we're going to talk about, and then to Jarrett Jones. And that happens sometimes when you're a freshman. But he came back and struck Jarrett Jones out with a letter-high 95-mile-an-hour fastball, too. So he's got all the goods, and I think all three of those guys have really bright futures. And I think Evans is the guy that I would lean to right now as a guy that I think can really help early and often. So they got a lot of arms that you're going to see a lot of guys pitch throughout the course of the first month. And the deal is, I don't expect everybody to be awesome. Like, you're going to have some bumps in the road. You just need 6 guys that you can really trust. And if you can get 3 of those to be starters and 3 guys that you trust in the back end of the bullpen, I mean, we haven't even talked about Zach Cowan, who you mentioned, and there are a number of arms that we haven't gotten to, but that's kind of the highlights of the staff. All right, let's go to catcher. That's a spot where you've lost literally every start for the last 2 years. Brady Neal, Hayden Travinsky, and Alex Milazzo caught every single game in a starting capacity over the last 2 seasons, national championship team and last year. So that's a complete overhaul that you're going to have to make. I know you've watched those guys pretty closely dating back to the fall. How do you handicap it right now?
It's their most unsettled position to me still. And I mean, I did a whole preview with it on Musso at the Box, and kind of went through each of the 4 guys and gave a projected starter, which we can get into, I guess. But my whole thing is, I don't think it really matters who starts on opening day, because I think the guy who starts game 2 is going to be different, and then the guy who starts game 3 is probably going to be different. They've got to figure that out. I think there's certain things that have stood out. Like, Cade Arambidi, to me, is by far the best offensive option there. By far. He's got a cannon of an arm, and he is not shy about showing it off and using it. Might need to be a little bit more shy in some situations, but he's a freshman. He's a freshman, and he'll get to that point, no doubt. Blaze Priester, I thought, has actually been really good behind the plate with the glove and keeping the ball in front of him. The offense hasn't been there, at least when I've been out there.
He led the team in home runs in the fall. But it's a boomer bust type deal.
Yeah.
There's a lot of swing and miss.
There is. I mean, when I was out there for one weekend, he went 0 for 6 with 6 strikeouts. And I was like, that's not great. But if the glove is as good behind the plate as he's kind of shown, then I'm willing to sacrifice a little bit of offense for an elite defensive position like catcher. Hernandez, he's kind of just been there, and I don't mean that as a bad thing. He's just been really steady, productive outs, done pretty well behind the plate, I think, defensively. And then I think it's very clear that Eddie Yaman's running 4th right now there, but it's a nice bat that you just kind of want to wait and see. So I don't know. I think if you gave me the lineup card right now and said who's starting opening day at catcher for you, if you're filling it out, I would probably go Priester and then give Arambidi game 2 and just things of that nature and try to figure it out a little bit more. But for me, it's the most unsettled position left on the team.
I'll be surprised if Hernandez is not the opening day starter catcher. I will also be surprised if he catches all 3 games. Like, to your point, you're going to see all of those guys go, and you may see mid-game substitutions at catcher. It's a high school left fielder can generally go play left field in college. Catcher is a different beast. Mm-hmm. You go from catching guys. I mean, Cade Arambidi was catching 6A in Texas last year, but you're catching a lot of 86 mile an hour fastballs, loopy breaking stuff. You don't have elite speed on the bases. Now everybody you're playing against is the fastest guy on their high school team, and you're catching 98, you're catching ridiculous light. It's just a different world back there at catcher, so that's going to take some time defensively. Hernandez has been the most steady guy defensively, I think, as far as catcher goes. He didn't do a lot of that at Indiana State the last couple of years. I think everyone considers Luis Hernandez a big power back because he hit 23 home runs. I would expect to tick down there because, one, it's better competition, and two, catching every day or catching a lot is going to sap you a little bit from a body perspective. But you're going to see a lot of different guys, and I think if you injected some truth serum into Jay Johnson and had him tell you what he hopes happens at catcher, I think he hopes Aaron Beatty forces his way to the 80% everyday catcher job by May 1st. I think that's what he hopes, but that's not a guarantee with freshmen. You just don't know the speed with which they're gonna show up. So again, I think you'll see all three guys over the course of the first couple of weeks at some different point.
Yeah, I agree. It's just they have to figure that out. I mean, my whole thing with the team is it has to come together quicker than it did a year ago.
Yeah,
catcher's going to be a big part of it. Now your schedule allows for that a little bit. You're not facing State, Florida,
right. Missouri's
Arkansas.
Your opener.
Yeah, Missouri's your opener. It's like it dictates itself to lend a little bit better to that this year. But when it came together for them last year, they were really good. It has to come together a little quicker, and catcher's a massive, massive part of that.
18 home runs for Jared Jones will put him third all time at LSU. He's got no chance to catch Furness or Cressy.
No.
Those are 4-year guys that hit a ton in the Gorilla Ball era. But passing some pretty significant names over the course of 18 home runs when Jared Jones gets there. And look, he hit 2 on Sunday. He's as good as he's ever been. The question is, can he cut down on the strikeouts a little bit? He did that from freshman year to sophomore year. If he does it again, you're talking about a guy who could be Conference Player of the Year.
Yeah, I think Jared Jones has a legitimate chance to hit 30 home runs this year. I mean, he hit 28. I know that's not a bold prediction. I'm not breaking any news, right? But it would be the first time LSU's had a 30 home run player since Brad Cressy in 2000. So, I mean, I think Jones has the opportunity to do that. I'll tell you the one thing I've enjoyed watching him so far in the preseason. You tell me if you've seen the same thing. He's using the backside of the field more in terms of base hits. I saw him beat the shift 3 different times over the course of being out there, which is that just shows me him taking his ability at the plate to the next level. He showed that a little bit in the power game last year, but you do that and it starts to find the outfield grass. That shift's going to go away pretty quick.
The question is who's going to hit behind him, and
yes,
that's something that Jay Johnson's going to have to figure out. Second base, I believe, has the lowest floor and highest ceiling of any position because I think that the tools that Danny Dickinson has could lend itself to being a special, special player, and it's not unreasonable. This has nothing to do with him. It's just reality. Going from Utah Valley to the SEC is a big deal, and some guys are going to be able to do it, and some guys aren't, and we won't know until he goes out there and does it. And I don't think you're going to learn anything about Danny Dickinson in the pre-conference. I think you'll have to see once the lights come on in SEC play. What we know about him is he's fast enough to steal 30 bases in a season, and he's got enough pop in his bat to hit 17, 18 home runs for Utah Valley as well. He's got the tools. It's just a matter of do they translate to the SEC. That's the question.
The altitude, too. I'm curious to see how that translates with the power. But he had a homer this past weekend as well. So, no, he is. I loved what Jay Johnson said about him in the in the preseason when he opened up practice. And first of all, he said he reminds him of Pete Rose, so he gave him 14, which I was just like, oh. But he said he's a guy that you love when he's on your team, you hate him when he's on the other team because he's just that gamer, that scrappy guy, self-made player, and I love that. And a guy like that is very hard to keep off the field because it's just you're not going to. He's not going to quit. He's not going to give in. He's just going to keep going, keep going. I thought it was really important for him to have the offensive weekend that he had this past go-round because a couple of times that I'd been out there was a little bit of inconsistency, some swing and miss, kind of the adjustment maybe already happening because we think LSU's pitching staff's going to be pretty good. But to see him bounce back and get hot kind of heading into the opener, I think that's important too. And he's going to need to perform because there's a guy behind him that might push him a little bit in Tanner Reeves.
For sure, and that's an insurance policy. It's a left-handed bat as well. I can absolutely see a world where Danny Dickinson hits 320 with 14 homers and 25 steals. I can absolutely see a world where he hits 225 and strikes out a bunch. Like we're just going to have to see. It's really intriguing because the tools are great, but this is the first year that LSU is really going to the lower level and bringing guys up. You're seeing it with Ianson, you're seeing it with Dickinson, you're seeing it with Luis Hernandez, you're seeing it with Jacob Myers. Usually it's the Tommy White, it's the Luke Holman, it's the Gage Jump, it's the Thatcher Hurd, Jacob Berry. They went to the Power 5 and got guys. This is guys, And look, A&M's had a ton of success bringing guys from the freaking Ivy League. So it can be done. It's just a different strategy this time around, and Dickinson is a big part of that. How do you feel about the left side of the infield?
I love the left side of the infield. I really do. I think Milam at short and Braswell at third gives you an opportunity to be really, really good over there. Milam, I thought when I was out there Sunday, had his best defensive day. Not that he had bad ones, but he made flashy plays. I think the arm strength is plenty good enough to play. I think the accuracy with his arm is good enough to play at short, and the range is definitely there. You saw the range at second base last year, so I think he fits in great. I think Braswell I think third base fits him a little more. He's looked very comfortable out there in what I've seen, charging the ball, going in front of short. Like, he's got the arm strength, obviously, because he comes from shortstop. So I feel really good about that. I think you maybe see some shuffling there early, too. But I think if they have their way, ultimately it ends up Milam at short and Braswell at third.
I'm a little concerned with the defense. It's just it's not a Jordan Thompson type arm that you've got with either one of those two, which he had a big time arm. I feel like both of those guys may profile as second basemen as opposed to shortstops, but they're going to hit fine. They're going to get on base, and I think Milam is going to hit for more power this year. You saw it late in the season. He had the home runs, big one in Hoover, and then a huge one in the regional as well with the walk-off over Wofford. I think he's going to hit 10, 12 home runs this year, which is not shocking when you just look at the stat sheet because he hit 8 last year. Right. But when you look at his stature, to consider that he would hit 12, 13 home runs is something that I think most people wouldn't suggest. But I think that's going to be fine. Braswell really did a great job with his approach last year late in the season. He's not going to hit 10 home runs, but he's going to get on base a lot. And I think if that's your guy in the 8 or 9 hole, I think you're in good shape. Yeah,
312 I think is what he ended up at last year. I mean, he came in as a career 250 hitter. To jump to 312 in his first year, that's huge. I mean, if he gives you any shred of that again, 300, 312, you're going to feel great about him in the lineup every day.
Got a feeling on Friday afternoon you're going to see Derek Curiel's name in that lineup, and it's going to be in the lineup every day for 3 years. Yeah. That's kind of what it looks like at this point. Hit a missile home run off of William Schmidt back on Saturday in the scrimmage. Was LSU's leading hitter in the fall. He's just a special bat-to-ball guy.
I have tried very hard to not overhype Derek Curiel. I don't think that I have, even though I think I've talked about him on literally like every podcast show that I've done. But he just, we've seen that guy before come through, and you go out there the first day and you watch him and you go, oh yeah, no, that guy's come like through LSU. We know what he looks like. He's got 4 out of the 5 tools, and I think the power will come. You said the missile home run. It's just not quite there yet, but the guy can hit. He hits to all fields. One weekend I was out there, I saw double down the right field line, singles to left and to center, all in the same game. So all fields. It's a lefty bat, which Jay Johnson's going to love. He can hit. He can run. He can throw. He looks like the next superstar freshman coming in, and he'll absolutely be out there. And eventually, he'll be LSU's everyday center fielder, eventually, throughout his career.
LSU only had 2 guys hit over 320 last year. Milam hit 326, and Tommy White hit 330. I think Curiel's going to hit 320 from the time he shows up on campus, and we'll see just how the power progresses. Again, that's the tool that kept him from being a really, really high draft pick. He's been quote-unquote famous in baseball circles since he was a freshman. He was once thought of as the top player in his high school class in the country because he had a big frame, and he's a big, good athlete, but he never bulked up and never hit for the power, and that's the tool that they want to see. And when it wasn't as projectable as some scouts would have liked, he dropped out of the first round projections and said, hey, I'm going to go to college, and that's a guy that's going to be really, really good for LSU. Do you feel like Stanfield has the job in center field locked up?
I do, and I think the bat's going to be fine, too. I know everybody's worried about that. I will reference Michael Braswell again. Like, Michael Braswell came to LSU to improve the bat, worked with Jay Johnson, and it worked. I think Chris Stanfield's doing a little bit of the same. And he hit 270 or so last year. He was tied for the team leading multi-hit games for Auburn, too. And Auburn was not a good baseball team. But it's the center field. It's the glove. That's your proven commodity. That guy's patrolled center field in the SEC for 2 years and has caught everything. Like, he's the vacuum that you've seen in center field for LSU over and over again. So, yeah, I think the glove is definitely good enough to keep him in the lineup while it progresses at the plate. But I think he's going to have a really nice year offensively. He can hit leadoff for you. He can get lower in the order. He handles the bat really well when it comes to bunting, which, I mean, they've been working a lot of different situations out there. So I know I like Stanfield. That was actually one of my favorite pickups that they had.
You feel like Brown's the right fielder?
Right now, yeah. I mean, I do right now.
I use this comparison probably too much, but it's always stuck with me. Andrew Stevenson played every sport under the sun growing up. He was a football player for STM, played wide receiver, and so he never devoted everything into baseball until he got to LSU. And his freshman year, he was completely overmatched. They put him in center field because he ran down everything. He couldn't hit at all. And he went off to the Cape, and he hit like crazy his summer, and then he came back and he hit like 360 his sophomore and junior year because he had taken all that athleticism and focused it into baseball. Brown is kind of that way because you've taken pitching off of his plate, basically. They were talking about him pitching a little bit back in the fall. I haven't seen any of that. He's just been hitting and playing in the outfield. And last year, he struggled to swing the bat. In league play, I think he was 3 for 21. For the season, he hit 264, but a lot of that was in non-conference games. But he's hit a ton in the fall and now in the preseason. Had a big weekend over the weekend. He's now taken all that natural athleticism that has allowed him to be the best baseball player on the field his whole life. He's now taken that pitching part off of his plate, and he's improved a ton offensively. I'm not talking like Skeens. You took the hitting off the plate, and he became superhuman. But I think that Brown's got a big stride to make from his freshman year to his sophomore year.
I do too, and I put him in the same category. Like I kind of said with Dickinson, it was great to see him have that weekend heading into the season. And I mean, he had 7 hits between Friday and Saturday, a couple home runs. He was just spraying the ball everywhere. He steps up for his first plate appearance on Sunday, drills one up the middle, was ticketed for center field, but Milam robbed him of a hit. It would have been his 8th hit and just continued it going. So he's seeing it great right now. We talked about finding someone to hit behind Jared Jones. I'm comfortable with Jake Brown getting the first crack at that.
Wow, I did not expect
at this
that.
point. I am. I am. I think if he takes the jump right now, you're going to play Purdue Fort Wayne. Let's see how it goes. And it would also allow Jay to alternate lefty-righty like he likes to do in the lineup. So if you're looking for some guy, I think Brown's the guy right now that I'd feel comfortable with for the first weekend. Let's see how it goes. Because right field is also just going to be interesting to watch because Ashton Larson still lurks there too, and he's hit the ball pretty well again. No surprise. So
Ashton Larson last year started 40 games and hit 298 as a freshman, and we don't think he's in the lineup. Josh Pearson has had monster at-bats for 3 years for LSU, dating back to the Hattiesburg Regional when he was a freshman. He had huge swings in that game. We know he homered in Omaha and was a big piece to that puzzle, and you're talking about those two guys maybe not being in the first 8. Now, you've got a DH spot you can play with. You mentioned Tanner Reeves. We talked about the catchers. And then you got Pearson and Larson and maybe Ethan Fry in the outfield as well.
Yeah.
Who do you like maybe is the next man up for a possible DH spot?
God, they have so many guys. I mean, I think it has to be one of them. I think everybody thinks DH. You think the big bopper, right? But, I mean, for me right now, it would either be Reeves or Larson. One of those two guys. I love the value that a guy like Josh Pearson gives you, just being able to put him in just about any situation. Like, he's definitely the guy I feel best about coming up in like a pinch hit role for sure for this team. And it wouldn't surprise me at all if he breaks his way back into the lineup because that's just what he's done for 3 years. Guy's got 120 starts, in his career at LSU. But if a DH for me right now, it would either be Larson or Reeves. They've just been pretty impressive to me at the plate again.
It's crazy that you've got that many left-handed bat options because everybody that you're talking about outside of Ethan Fry that could potentially play right field hits left-handed. Jake Brown hits left-handed. Ashton Larson hits left-handed. Josh Pearson hits left-handed. Reeves is a left-handed hitter as well. So you've got a lot of left-handed hitting options. Usually that's a differentiator for somebody at a spot. Well, he's left-handed. Well, they've got a lot of guys that are left-handed that you could plug in there and see how they swing the bat. All right, I'm putting you on the spot a little bit here because we didn't talk about this but do you have what's your biggest concern? What gives you pause about this team? I'll start and give you a second to think about that. I am a little bit concerned with 2 things. One, defense in the middle of the field that comes at catcher and at shortstop. And then I think Stanfield's going to be just fine, and I think Dickinson's okay at second. But a little bit of concern at catcher and then shortstop. And then I just would feel better if you were coming into this season with a guy who had started on Fridays in the SEC or started on Saturdays in the SEC. All these guys are super talented, but none of them have passed this test yet. And that is a little bit concerning because it's such a vital piece to having a great team. I love Kate Anderson's stuff. I think Ianson has proven he's an innings eater at a lower level. I think you've got a ton of potential in Chase Shores, and you could even throw Guidry or Connor Ware in there to start. There are certainly options. I'm just a little bit concerned with the lack of a proven frontline guy. At least last year, you had Luke Coleman, who had done it at Alabama. And so that's where my biggest concern lies here. And maybe it's not even a concern. Maybe it's just a question mark more than a concern, but it gives me a little pause.
Well, I think I will second that with the pitching staff for sure, because I think there's a lot of unknown kind of throughout it. We hyped up Kason Evans and William Schmidt and Connor Ware and all those newcomers, and you mentioned the unknown with Anderson, and we talked about that a little earlier. And for sure, I mean that's part of it too. Like I don't, like I said, I think that's really the one area of the team you could actually consider them young, right? Because there's just, while maybe some of them are veterans, there's not necessarily the innings that you would like in those spots. So I will agree with you on that. But I mean, for me, it is the protection for Jared Jones. He has to be allowed to be your best hitter. And if you do not have anyone to hit behind him, that's just going to be really difficult for him, especially given his profile where it is a big bat and swing and miss and all of those things in there. You have to find that guy. Like one of the reasons he was able to have so much success and take that jump, aside from the work he did, was Tommy White was still in the lineup. Tommy White's not in the lineup anymore. I said, I'm comfortable with giving Jake Brown the first crack. That's just the first crack. Like, it may not work out, and it's back to the drawing board. And who do you find to put behind there? For this offense, you've got plenty of options and plenty of talent, but for it to reach its heights, you have to have somebody hitting behind Jared Jones that forces the other team to pitch to him.
It's twofold. One, somebody's got to do that, and you got to find that guy. You're missing Tommy White, who hit 24 home runs last year. You're missing Hayden Travinski, who hit 16 home runs last year. Mac Bingham hit 8 home runs last year. So, like, you're missing a lot of that thump, and you're going to have to try to produce that. But the second part of that equation is that Jared Jones is going to have to adjust mentally to a lot of breaking balls and a lot of pitches that are off the plate. He's going to have to take walks, and that's not the most fun thing in the world, and he did a pretty good job of it last year. I mean, look, North Carolina stayed away from him a lot last year. No, he did hit him for the 1 home run in that last game, but they were putting him on a little bit because he was just that hot. He's got to take walks, and if that means you're not getting as many chances to swing the bat and you don't end up with 28 home runs this year, like, that's just part of it. But like, he's mentally going to have to understand that teams are going to circle him the second they get to the ballpark, because there just aren't that many guys in the. I mean, think of the guys that are gone from the SEC.
Yeah,
Pagliano's gone, Condon's gone, White's gone. Like, you've got obviously Jay Slavulette, and then you've got Petrie at South Carolina. But like, Christian Moore's gone, Blake Burke's gone. Like, the big names in the conference, like, he's right there. Like, he's 1A behind probably Jay Slavulette. So he's going to have to take some walks. That's a concern. I mean, that's something he's going to have to deal with.
Yeah, I mean, so that for me, because at times, I mean, LSU got off to a slow start at the plate last year. They did. The pitching carried them early, and then it kind of flipped on its head mid-season, and then ultimately they started playing team baseball down the stretch. But that's, again, it all has to come together faster, and Jared Jones being able to be the best hitter on this team is a huge part of that. So finding the right guy behind him, and him, as you said, maturing mentally, that is something big for me.
Are they a top 8?
I think they are top 8. I do. I think the schedule dictates that a little bit better for them this year as well. I mean, I think while the SEC is extremely deep as it is every single year, I don't know if it is as deep as it was a year ago. I mean, Tennessee, I think they're going to be very good, but they could take a step back just because of all that they lost. Like, you don't lose that much and just roll through it once again.
Look at the last 3 defending national champs.
I mean,
2 didn't make the postseason, and LSU scraped in.
Right. Like, so, I mean, you got that. I mean, obviously, Georgia has lost a lot. I mean, they were a top 8 a season ago. Like, I don't think they're going to be in that realm. So I think that kind of stuff dictates it a little bit for LSU. I'm not going to sit here and tell you they're going to be the top overall seed or even a top 4, but I do think they get into the top 8.
Do you think I'll be boarding that flight that they've booked me in February for Omaha?
I do. I do. I really do. I think this, because I think there'll be a top 8 and postseason will go through the box. And if postseason goes through the box, I know there's Stony Brook and Coastal and the rare Houston. Don't get me started on that regional. The rare case where it doesn't happen, but when the postseason goes through the box, I'm ticketing LSU for Omaha. They almost got there last year when it didn't go through the box. So, or they had a chance. So I do. Yeah, I think so. But again, it's preseason. People have just been asking me, what do you think of the team? And I just look at them and I go, 56-0. Because, I mean, it's preseason. Yeah, it's preseason, right? I mean, it's just going to be the standard answer. So I'll give you more. But, yeah, they're going to be great. Hope springs eternal, all those things. But I do. I think they're an Omaha team.
Musso at the box every day?
every day, man. We've been rolling with it now for about 3 weeks again, every day. YouTube, subscribe, or in your favorite podcast app. Anywhere you get your podcast, we're there. Take me wherever you go with you. It'd be greatly appreciated.
Post game, every game over at LouisianaSports.net as well. We'll see y'all out at the box.